So, as I said, I want to talk about three things: Cap.js community, mtx-tool, and Jupyter tokens. And in 20 minutes, that's quite tight, so let's get started. First of all, I want to talk about the GitHub orgs. So you saw today in the keynote from Daniel that there is a very prominent GitHub org, Cap.js, where we have a lot of open source tools that are from the Cap team, from SAP. They maintain them. They're not going to start again, sorry. So since, or can you turn off the echo, please? Since we heard a lot today already in the keynote about the Cap.js org, I want to shout it out to everyone. Can we turn off this echo? Ja. Das Laptop-Mikro ist aus, glaube ich, oder? Ich glaube, es ist aus. Ja. Das muss an sein, damit ich gehört werde im Call. Also das ist richtig. Okay. So I want to shout out to the room that just please send some support, some love to the Cap.js community. Check out the projects. It's by real people which would love to have some adoption. All right. One such tool that is already in a little use is the mtx-tool. It's a Swiss Army knife for software as a service apps that use BTP, and it takes the convoluted services sometimes of the BTP platform and makes them very easy to use. I gave a talk about this last year on Last Cap, which is also in person. I don't know why this was not mentioned by Jürgen, but anyways. And there was a user, okay, it's very small here, but they said on Twitter, okay, it's a great tool, but when can we use it? And only half a year later in January, it was released to the public on Cap.js community. And if you want to get the details about the mtx tool, you can just watch the session from last time. Okay, on to the main part of the talk, which is the feature toggle library. That's what I mainly want to talk about today. It's another project that I published in the Cap.js community, and it takes care of application logic toggles and realizes them through Redis. All right, and now it's time for demo. So let's do this. This is now the, okay, then we are in sync again. I hope this gets shared now. Maybe one of you can check. But now at least the room can see it. Okay, online as well, thank you. So this is the project that I checked out from GitHub. This is the same stuff you can also look at. And so it's a little Node.js library. And within that library, you have an example Cap server that I think is the most important part for now. No, okay, so I wanted to show something else first, actually. So there's a documentation to the library, and here are the main features that I want to talk about, which are part of the documentation. So you can maintain feature toggle states consistently across multiple app instances. And this is, I think, the main subtlety in the basic documentation of this thing, that if you scale apps horizontally, that the state of the feature toggles remains consistent and changes are handled correctly in the sense that, you know, when you have horizontally many apps running, that everyone gets the same update around the same time and so on. So I think that's all I wanted to say here. And Redis is used to realize this through a pub/sub mechanism. Okay. And now, how does this look in practice? For the practice, as I said, we look at this repo, and we have an example Cap server, which is just a very simple Cap application. And to give you an intuition that this is not using a lot of code to realize what it does, or what I will show in a second, I used this count lines of codes thing. And so you can see, let's run it. You know, we have like 50 lines of JSON, 10 lines of YAML, a little markdown you can ignore, and 149 lines of JavaScript, so it's basically nothing. And then I can run this server. and it starts up like every other CAP server. Since I have the feature toggles integrated here now, it tells me that I forgot to start Redis because it doesn't have a Redis. So let's do that then. Do it again. Then it starts up again and detects, okay, now I have a local Redis, no errors. What I want to show first is I have here now a configuration file where I configure my feature toggles in YAML. I like YAML as a format for this. We have 2 feature toggles that we will hopefully get through today. I think the time is still enough. One is about a check API. This is just mock stuff, but something that could inspire you. A check API where you have a priority endpoint, and here in this feature toggle, I want to decide what the priority is of someone that uses this, and it will be a number. The fallback value that I always get if nothing else is overwritten will be 0, meaning they have no priority. I have a regular expression here that validates, because number in JavaScript can be Booleans or negative numbers and so on, and I just want positive integers. So that's what this validation does. And we have something called scopes, which are kind of runtime information about the toggle request, and the scopes that I expect here are user and tenant. And so this is also configured. And then we have another simpler toggle, which just tells the server to give us some memory log statistics. And I will show this first because it shows kind of how the thing is propagated in almost real time. So let's get started. The requests that I will be using to trigger these toggles are maintained as these HTTP files. And since I want to change the features, I'm using the feature service now. And the way this works is, I mean, we can just first of all look at the features. This is how the server reports the state of the features right now. So check priority has the fallback value that we've seen. It knows the validation regular expression, knows the number and so on. And this also just has the fallback value. So we have not set any features for now. I did the cleanup yesterday, so it works. And so what we will start with is the memory log interval. So I'm putting a post here where I go to the feature service and say update my memory log interval key to the value 1000. So let's post it. And immediately the server starts to log these memory statistics. And the fun thing is now you can use smaller numbers as well. So we can go down to 100 and you see it logs it faster. Make it work even faster. Okay. And then of course we can go to 0 and make it stop. So this is kind of this immediacy, and the interesting thing is if you had many instances in parallel, this would still work through the power of this framework and Redis. Okay. This was kind of the high level thing where you manipulate server state directly, and then we have the more intricate situation where you want to change the values based on, as I said, this runtime information. So you have a user, you have a tenant, you have some kind of runtime state, runtime information, and you want to incorporate this in the values that you get from the feature toggles. And we can do this as well. And I would demo this right now. This will be this other check service. So let's check this out. We have 4 users here. Alice, Bob, Clark, and Danny. And if we check here, these are all, of course, mock users for this little demo. But Alice and Bob are in the tenant people. And, you know, they have their emails as IDs. And then Clark and Danny are in the tenant pets, so we can distinguish them. And they are modern pets. They also have emails. Okay, so yes, so for now, as we've seen before, there's no state, so everyone should get a priority 0. So this will get a 0, you get a 0, everyone gets a 0. Okay, and now we can, of course, change this and say, dear feature service, let's have just everyone get a 1. You know, we just up the baseline. And we call this the root scope because it doesn't specify either a user or a tenant or any other particular information. So if we do it now, you know, you can see it here, everyone gets a 1. Clark gets a 1. Okay. And then I still have some time. And then we have we can up the value for all people, for all users who have tenant people, and let's up it to 10, and then let's check it. So Alice should get a 10, and the pets should still get a 1, like before. And then we can go even further and say, hey, we like Alice in particular, and she gets 100. Bam. And then Bob is still a person and gets a 10, or people, but Alice, we like her even more. She gets 100. Okay, so the scoping system is kind of our way to incorporate this usually runtime request information and make the feature toggles switchable on that stuff. And I think CAP is a great help for that, because if we now look at the implementation of this check service, it's very, very, hopefully, very, very simple. So let's look at the modeling first, maybe. So we have just one endpoint priority, which returns the string that we've seen. And all it does, as I said, it's very little code. All it does is it runs this handler, which basically does this get feature value and passes in this user and tenant information directly from the CDS context. So it couldn't be simpler. And then we get this nice behavior that we can do these kind of switches. Okay. I think that's the main things I wanted to say today. And so let's go back to the presentation. And thank you.